All right, welcome back to Daybreak on this 11th day of May 2020, and it's time to speak to the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, who is also the party leader of the Wiper Democratic Movement. He's also a special envoy to the South Sudan. Good morning, Your Excellency. How are you keeping?
Very well, Sam. A very good morning to you and all the viewers.
Right, and Your Excellency, of course, we have seen several efforts that you've been putting in place in terms of supporting the urban poor. But before you talk about that, how do you rate the war against this pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, since the 13th of March to this date?
Well, this is the most serious challenge to humanity in the 21st century, for sure. It is been equated to a world war, only that this time it is without bullets. So this pandemic is the most serious challenge we are facing, as not just as Kenya and the region, but the whole world. If you imagine, as we speak to you, Sam, those in the United States are counting upwards of 80,000 people, lives lost, and those in Europe, now Italy and Spain have been overtaken by the UK in terms of mortality rate. You begin to see how serious this matter is. But we are thankful to God that Africa seemingly is not being able to spike in spite of the predictions to the contrary. So we hope that this matter will stay away from us. This morning I was looking at the words of the book of Psalms 91, where the psalmist is basically saying, getting assurance that this plague will not come near their tent. So let us hope that the spiking will not happen in Kenya. We claim those gospel words, those words in the Bible, in the book of Psalms 91. I know a lot of people have been referring to it. But we are a believing nation. We prayed, remember President Uhuru led national prayers, because science, even science itself is subject to the word of God. So I think she need to say this I need to say this very early in the morning as a nation wakes up, so that we continue to place our trust in God. There's always a higher power. Even Abraham Lincoln, one of the most famous American president, I think he was the 16th president,
right,
openly said they kind of gave way to a higher power. Maybe God is telling something to humanity, Sam, and I think people have taken it for granted that they can do without God. And there's always a place for that higher power.
Right.
So I think that on the whole, Kenya has seemingly done very well. And I want to congratulate my brother, President Uhuru, for taking and leading this charge against this pandemic. The Mbutai Kagwe team of Mercy Mwangangi and Dr. Amana, I think have done a good job.
Right.
But of course, I celebrate our frontliners, our medical staffers, who have been in the front line in trying to make sure that Kenya is kept safe. And of course, our government, I think a lot of them have been trying to prepare just in case things get a little bit out of control. So all of us as a country, I think, have come together to fight this pandemic. And in our own small...
Your Excellency, if I may cut you short, of course, many Kenyans would want this pandemic to be out of the country as fast as possible. But there are challenges that are burning. You're talking about the economic opportunities that have been lost. There are people that have been have become jobless now. There are those that have to depend on aid. I mean, are there any more efforts that we can put in place to quicken the process of getting this disease out of the country that you would think of?
Well, of course, there's got to be first and foremost the medical approach, the first responders. Who must have said the frontliners have tried their best. The only challenge right now, and we can do better in this, we really do not want to hear that our nurses and our doctors are unhappy at this time. It's a time to think of them and make sure that whatever complaints they have are speedily addressed. And so, because the other day I was seeing that they may want to go on strike on the 18th of this month, that will be a serious reversal. What would happen? I mean, they suddenly will turn from being heroes to people being blamed. And all of us need to get out of this pandemic together as a nation. So there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can do in terms of caring for each other. If you see the story of this young lady in Kisauni who was boiling stones,
right.
real stones, in the hope that she can tell our children who.
Well, unfortunately, we lost the signal of the former vice president there, but we'll be trying to reconnect with him. And as we do so, he was there talking about the situation in the country, saying that, yes, we need to kick out the disease out of the country, but at the same time, there are those challenges that are affecting the health workers, talking about the nurses and doctors. So, of course, we have had a notice of a strike announced by the nurses, indicating that they will be proceeding on strike because some of their grievances have not been addressed. And basically, there has been that appeal that this is not the time really for that, but the former vice president has been advocating for quick resolution of those challenges. And even as we talk about this, we wake up to a country where this morning we have 672 cases of confirmed cases of the coronavirus pandemic, and essentially that means that the numbers have been rising. We're reporting the worst week, and now we are joined back by we're joining the former vice president once again. Sorry about that technical hitch, but you were talking about the situation with the medical workers. And I would want to connect that with the situation we see. Several measures that have been put in place to save the economy here in the country. We saw the tax measures that are put in place by Parliament, if I may call it so. And now we know that VAT has been reduced. The pay-as-you-earn taxation has been reduced, the maximum being 25% instead of 30%. When you look at all these measures, how sustainable are they? And are they sufficient to be in a position to safeguard the interest of the common mwananchi?
Well, clearly, Sam, these are very extraordinary times, and extraordinary times will call for extraordinary measures. So Parliament did, in my view, is most welcome. And of course, they were trying to put in place the measures by the executive or President Ruto and his government that proposed. But we must look beyond these measures and really look at a situation where we're going to have to do post-COVID-19 reconstruction of the economy. Not just as a country, but as a region. Because you look at what is happening, there are even regional tensions now, because drivers are supposed to be tested before they cross the border in Malaba, or indeed those coming from Tanzania, and that kind of feeling. I heard the other day President Museveni saying that Uganda is the bedroom, and Kenya is the sitting room. And the first room was okay, but the sitting room had challenges. Now look at it, they see the interconnectivity of East African economies, and with Kenyan economy being, of course, the driving force behind the region. So but at home, we need to recognize that those who are vulnerable, vulnerable Kenyans need to be addressed speedily. Those taxation measures may be welcome, but I think we need to do a little bit more. All of us as Kenyans need to be each other's keeper, our brothers and our sisters' keeper. This is why at the Kalonzo Musyoka Foundation, I'm privileged to be the patron, we came up with this idea of a food basket. And to be able to reach out that urban poor lady or person, that lady in Kisauni was boiling stones to feed our children, at least to make them believe there's food coming.
Right.
We need to be able to reach out to the vulnerable in a very specific manner.
Your Excellency, how are you handling that aid that has been coming to the Kalonzo Musyoka Foundation? Are you managing it as a foundation, or are you handing it over to the COVID-19 fund that is national? I
think viewers will have noticed that the first batch that we received, we were able to hand it over, a check of 3 million shillings together with the hard food stuff. We drove to Kahawa Barracks, and I think part of it was I saw Minister Matiani give to people in the slums in Mukuru Kwanjenga and Mukuru Karuben, and I think others can do a lot more. If KMF, which has not been as active as we would have wanted to in the last few years, if we could do that, a lot more people can. Therefore, I celebrate the work of the Rapid Response Team led by Madam Karuku. These are some serious captains of industry, and they are all determined in terms of accountability. They assured me that every cent they receive will be used for the benefit of the vulnerable Kenyans. Because they have several pillars. And then the other pillar is the pillar that I'm trying to look at, where we need to think in terms of reconstruction of this economy. Everything, some will have changed. after this COVID-19. The way we do business, the way we educate our children, the way we even conduct political business. Yeah, so it's going to have to change. I don't, for instance, imagine that you're going to go all over again holding rallies, town hall meetings in the foreseeable future because of this pandemic in order to deal with the BBI, for instance. And yet this is urgent work, very necessary work for the future, for the benefit of this country and the future generations. So we have to up our really, literally, everybody has to up their state.
Oh, and of course, Your Excellency, of so many things will have to change on how we operate them. I'm looking, excuse me, I'm looking at financing of the budget that we have in the country. The KRA has announced that there will be a shortfall of 233 billion shillings. You've been in the executive before. So, and yes, we now have a loan of 79 billion shillings from the IMF. The World Bank is just about to give us 100 billion shillings. But how sustainable can these be, bearing in mind that nobody knows when the pandemic will be gone, nobody knows when the economy will recover?
Well, one can understand there will be a serious shortfall in that world economies world over are expected to underperform. Those in Europe will grow by a negative 7.5%. It is estimated when we had hoped our GDP was going to grow on average by 6%. And of course, with it comes a possibility of increased job opportunities. But now that will be, all that will be a thing of the past, and we now have to think in terms of how else we are going to grow our economy. Right now, if we manage 1.5%, we'll have done very well. Now, that is how serious this whole matter is. Therefore, as KRA underperforms clearly in terms of collecting of revenue, let us also hope that the vulnerable groups like the retirees who are now having to be taxed.
Well, unfortunately, once again, we lost the connection there. We'll try to reconnect as the former Vice President concludes his remarks this morning as we talk about the situation in the country, talking about the tax measures that have been put in place, the shortfall that is just about to be experienced by the Kenya Revenue Authority of 233 billion shillings. And so what you're asking him is what he thinks would be the proper solutions to really seal that gap that now stares the country stares, and of course looking at the other aspects that, some of the proposals that he had made earlier on is that Parliament would sort of make some amendments to the law on the National Government Constituency Development Fund. We don't know how that went. To be speaking to him to tell us about if there are any efforts going towards that direction, and also to look at the situation with the reopening of some parts of the economy. We now have the former Vice President again. Sorry about that. I hope that's the last hitch we experienced this morning. But looking at the economy and reopening, we've seen efforts being made to reopen restaurants and eateries. There has been protocols set by the Ministry of Health. But there are those that say the cost of testing is pretty expensive for such establishments to go about it. What are your thoughts in as far as how this testing should be just to boost the economy?
Well, people are thinking in terms of reopening, but even as we do so, I think it's important to be guided by what the experts are saying. We do not want to see a situation where we reopen everything and then the spiking takes place of this pandemic. So we need to really be able to steer the delicate balance of recognizing that Kenyans have to eke out a living, yeah. And at the same time, we have to be careful not to increase the numbers that are already not looking that nice. So, at least from the perspective of the region. But I think that Kenyans have done very well. The reason the numbers are looking a little high is because our people have been able to try a beta testing.
Right.
Beta testing, everybody getting to be tested. And again, as they do the testing, I want to suggest that this is also being made friendly. Because when I saw Minister Kagwe saying that now those who are tested and are positive do not have to worry about paying when they go for quarantine. So this is some of the important things. So we balance as we open a few restaurants and follow the protocols strictly. I see that Kenyans are again busy in the streets. There are traffic jam again normal in Nairobi. Even as we get to the streets, we need to be careful. Let us wear those masks wear masks. I think I was the first to say, really mask. If I wear a mask, I protect you. If you wear one, you're protecting me. The reason I'm not wearing one right now, some is because I'm talking to you from the privacy of my office.
Right.
So this is why it's important we continue with those protocols, washing hands and keeping distance, social distancing, until we know what is going to happen with this pandemic.
And Your Excellency, as we start to conclude, we look at the situation. You had that sort of appeal to Parliament to amend the National Government CDF law that talks about the allocation of funds to the constituencies. I don't know what exactly you meant with that, and have you had any headways into convincing some of your members of Parliament to probably sponsor such kind of legislative proposals?
I thought it would be very good, because if you look at the projects that are ongoing at every constituency and CDF, I do not think the law had anticipated a situation where you'll be faced with a national pandemic like this one. So I think it is up to members of Parliament to really see whether they can review the CDF Act in order to make it possible for them to now deal with the mass distribution of support to their constituents. Akujuaye kwa dhiki ndiye kweli rafiki. This is important. So the activities that they're dealing with other projects like involving schools, and schools are closed, could in the meantime use those funds to reach out to the vulnerable groups in their constituencies. But again, it's so entirely within the province of our legislators.
So you have not been able to convince some of your members of Parliament?
Well, it's not a matter of convincing. It is really up to them to take leadership and hear what you're saying, because Kenyans will remember those who are able to stand with them in this very difficult time. And I think people need to be flexible. Flexibility and at the same time accountability is what is stressed. Even as we get that 79 billion from IMF and other places, the world expects that Kenya will continue to exercise responsibility in terms of accountability for funds that come in the form of loans. So transparency, accountability, the fight against graft at every level, at the CDF constituency level, at the county government level, the national level, these are things we must continue to speak about loudly.
And so, Mheshimiwa Kalonzo, so there's the situation with the 1 billion shillings, 1.3 billion shillings that has been allocated to the Ministry of Health. I saw you speaking about it and saying that the pilferage is already ongoing. Do you think it's possible that we fight this pandemic without the suspicion being there? And how do we help with the accountability that we should be seeing at such times and even in the future?
I think I saw a statement by the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Health, actually at some stage indicating that even as people were saying there was pilferage of the 1.3 billion shillings, they had actually not even started spending a cent. So you give benefit to the Ministry of Health, but I think what people are saying is at the end of the process, there may be need to, in terms of public accountability, and of course there's always the Committee of Parliament dealing with public accounts, that these matters will be taken into account. But for now, everybody, kila mtu ajibike, so that we do not hear of cases of misallocation, misappropriation, pilferage, stealing from the public. This will not be acceptable.
All right, and Mheshimiwa, so as we wind up, let's talk about the political situation in the country. Of course, this morning we're expecting a meeting of the Jubilee senators in State House, but I will not talk about that. Let's talk about the County Public Accounts and Investments Committee and the changes that were there. This is a committee that should be chaired by a minority or a senator from the minority team. Did you have any information of the consultations that are going on there, bearing in mind that you come from the NASA coalition?
No, I think this was a matter that was driven by our coalition partners, ODM, and I think they dealt with it the best way they thought they needed to. We, as WIPA, were not involved in any way, because I think both Senators Sam Ongeri, renowned statesman, and so young Olkina, they had to leadership, to claim leadership of that very important committee. So I just want to leave that to ODM, because Senator Jim Orengo is a minority leader with it, and I think that is work in progress. WIPA definitely had nothing to do with it.
Okay, but as a coalition partner, do you think that has been a fair process? Because Olekina would appear to have won that election of the committee, and now he's being actually removed from the committee, and therefore he cannot chair it. Do you think that's a fair process?
I admire the exuberance of young Senator Olekina. I wish him well. It is good that all those matters be addressed, and I think there will be a balance found within our coalition friends in ODM. I think they should be able to deal with it, take into account all these matters that have been raised. So if Senator Olekina won properly, I'm sure that leadership in ODM will listen, but it was not a matter that was dealt with as a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Right, and Avio here is asking, because they saw you, I believe, towards the end of last week, alongside the Senator of Baringo, Gideon Moi, who was obviously donating some aid to the Kalonzo Musyoka Foundation, and he sort of spoke about the coalition between the Jubilee and KANU. Are there any political workings, even as you continue to preach about handshake and the Building Bridges initiative?
It's very interesting. I saw some bragging, I think, by Dennis Itumbi in the social media, saying that Senator Gideon Moi was boasting about the agreement he signed. There's no such thing. Senator is not the type to boast about anything. It is well within the KANU and Jubilee within their right to conclude a post-election coalition. And I wish them well. As WIPA, we're also consulting with our coalition partners in ODM, ODM, ANC, and Ford Kenya, to be able to see what else we can do, because at this time, I think the country needs to come together, regardless of political persuasion, right? In order to jumpstart the economy, in order to unite this country further. So I can tell you.
Well, unfortunately, no, we have him now. Please carry on.
Yeah.
You are making a point on the consultation within the partners within NASA.
And I'm saying that WIPA will be ready to enter into a cooperation agreement with both KANU and Jubilee when that time comes. But we are open. We are open to that. But right now, of course, we are guided by the provisions of the coalition agreement we have within NASA.
Your Excellency, allow me to ask this. What exactly do you mean that you would be ready to enter into a coalition agreement with the Jubilee Party and KANU? Because Jubilee is the ruling party, or rather has the majority in parliament, and it is in the executive. What exactly does that mean? Is it the depth of opposition in the coming days?
No, we all have to look to the future, my friend. How we have to prepare ourselves for the future challenges and obviously context, political context. You cannot run away from that. But I'm saying the initial stage is to think of a cooperation agreement, not necessarily a coalition agreement at this stage, because we have our NASA coalition. As I said, we are consulting with my coalition partners to look at the best way forward. But there's need to progress the whole very important matter of national cohesion, integration, even as we look at the post-COVID-19 situation. Everything, my friend Sam, has to take as his background the challenge we are faced with through this pandemic.
So that cooperation agreement, are we likely to see it during this term of the current parliament or beyond that? We
had our NEC meeting, which was virtual. And I can tell you that just to indicate how things have changed, we had a record attendance on virtual when we convened the National Executive Council of WIPA. And we agreed that we need to be able to open negotiations and be able to move in that direction. So we already set, but the only thing is you need to look at the legalities of this issue. We have an existing coalition agreement with NASA, and then the need also to promote national cohesion. We are looking into this, and it doesn't necessarily mean you kill opposition in this country, far from it.
Well, okay. All right. Thank you so much, Your Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, speaking to us from Nairobi. And thank you for making time for us on Daybreak. And now we want to take a short break after that interview with the former Vice President, who says that they are in talks to see how cooperation agreements can be reached with Jubilee and KANU. So we'll be waiting to see how that progresses. Up next is Eugene Omalo, the Cabinet Secretary in charge of devolution. He will be speaking to Zinzi Kibiku in a bit.